What is up? GoodMicWork back at you. Extreme Rules 2017 is in the books, and that was a pretty surprising finish to that pay-per-view, to say the least. And I cannot believe these words are going to come out of my mouth, but I am really, really excited for Great Balls of Fire. What did you guys think of the show? The reaction on Twitter, I'd have to say, was pretty mixed. I mean, there was a lot of negative stuff, there was a lot of positive stuff, lots of complaints about the crowd tonight. There was a couple of matches on this pay-per-view that I was really looking forward to seeing, despite the fact that this pay-per-view kind of felt like a one-match card. I was still interested in the IC title match. I was still interested in the Cruiserweight submission match. I knew the Hardy Boys and Sheamus and Cesaro were going to do some crazy things, and I was holding out hope that maybe even Alexa Bliss and Bayley could surprise us. So I did have a few expectations. I really thought this pay-per-view was going to be better than it looked on paper, but I don't know if it necessarily was. I think the show was probably going to get positive reviews due to the outcome of the main event, but overall, the crowd seemed flat, the show seemed flat at times, and I didn't really know what to make of it. So why don't we start right at the top with the main event. The show just ended a few minutes ago, and Samoa Joe won the Fatal 5-Way, and he's now the #1 contender for Brock Lesnar's Universal title, and he will face him next month at Great Balls of Fire in the main event. That's pretty intriguing because this is really a dream match that fans have wanted for a long time, but I was one of the people that thought this was a match we would never see. You know, just given Vince McMahon's way of thinking and the way the WWE is, Samoa Joe at this stage of his career, to me, isn't the guy WWE would put in the ring with Brock Lesnar. So I got to give them credit. A lot of people were probably pushing hard for Joe. Finn Balor came in last year and won the Universal title at SummerSlam, so he's kind of already established as a top contender. And Joe has been on a tear since he came into the company, or came into the main roster in February, and he did an awesome job in NXT, won the NXT title a couple of times. But even with all of that, I just didn't see WWE putting him in the ring with Brock Lesnar, and now they're going to do it, and that match should be fun. Two badasses. That is the very definition of a slobber knocker if there ever was one. So we'll get into the Great Balls of Fire match here in a minute. First, I want to just mention the Fatal 5-Way match itself at Extreme Rules. It was an awesome match. Like I said, the show and the crowd was a little bit flat at times, and I'll talk about that here in a minute, but the main event really picked things up. It reminded me a lot of Survivor Series, how they had that great 5-on-5 match that went an hour and really saved the pay-per-view in a lot of ways. And this was another example of these five guys going out there and tearing it up and turning the crowd and getting them back interested in the show. I mean, they were chanting, "This is awesome." They were marking out. They were cheering. Seemed like the crowd had a pretty good time, at least in the main event. We saw some awesome spots. We saw the Finn Balor barricade spot. And then we saw Seth Rollins, Jesus Christ, frog splash through the table. Are you kidding me? I complimented his frog splash on Raw last week in his match with Roman Reigns, and then this one from the top rope onto the table was unbelievable. So this match was a lot of fun. I figured it would be. A lot of teases and near falls throughout the whole thing. A lot of fans still thought that Roman Reigns was going to win this, despite everything, despite all of the signs pointing to him not winning. A lot of people were still very concerned that Roman Reigns might come out on top of this thing, and my argument was, well, even if he did, let's just say for argument's sake he won tonight, that means we're getting his match with Brock at Great Balls of Fire instead of SummerSlam or WrestleMania, so that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But I just did not see it happening. I didn't think there was any chance in the world that Roman Reigns was going to win this match. I picked Seth Rollins. I thought Seth might get the nod here to face Brock Lesnar. I wanted Finn Balor to win, but I wasn't sure if WWE was going to do that. And then we heard the rumors throughout this week that Samoa Joe is now kind of the favorite to win this thing. And then when you watch the pay-per-view and you realize that heels won in every single match except for one, I did not see Samoa Joe's victory coming. And I'm glad that they did it this way because it was kind of a swerve for me. Now it gives us a whole different match for Great Balls of Fire that I really didn't think that much about, and I wasn't giving Samoa Joe much thought. So this match with Brock should be fun, and I don't think we're going to see a repeat of what we saw with Goldberg. I don't think there's going to be a squash in this thing. Now, right now, my early prediction, just minutes after Extreme Rules ended, I would have to say that I don't expect Samoa Joe to beat Brock for the title, but you never fucking know. I didn't expect him to win this match either, and he did. But right now, I don't think Samoa Joe is necessarily going to win this match with Brock, but I definitely don't see him getting squashed. I think he's going to put up a good fight. I think it's going to be a war. I think Brock will come out on top, but Brock will kind of have respect for Samoa Joe when it's over, and it could lead to a rematch in the future. Maybe not right away at SummerSlam. Maybe Brock goes on to something else. Maybe Joe goes on to something else because he still has some loose ends to tie up with Seth Rollins. And I hope they come through and give us something special because Brock needs that special match. We haven't seen that from him in a while. And giving him this new opponent in Samoa Joe, a guy that the fans actually want to see him wrestle, I think is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really interested in the crowd reaction because technically this is a heel versus versus heel match here. And Samoa Joe, I have a feeling, is going to be the babyface in this thing because he's on the main roster. He's there wrestling every week. Brock Lesnar, some of the fans are starting to turn on him. They still agree that he's a badass and he's awesome and all of that, but they're kind of getting tired of him working part-time, having such a limited move set now with the German suplexes one after another. And it reminds me a lot of what The Rock went through 15 years ago in 2002 when Brock Lesnar was the new guy in the scene and they went into SummerSlam and the crowd turned on The Rock and started cheering for Brock because he was the new guy. I think Brock is going to find himself in that situation, which kind of brings up a thought. I mean, WWE, they're not ignoring the fact that Brock is rarely on TV either. You see a lot of wrestlers taking shots at Brock in their promos. WWE mentions that Brock Lesnar is at home a lot and takes a lot of time off. So maybe they're trying to feed into this and get him some heat with the fans. So they really, really want to see him drop the belt. And if the guy that he drops the belt to is Roman Reigns, maybe WWE thinks that could get Roman Reigns some cheers to see somebody finally dethrone Brock Lesnar, this guy that just sits on his ass for 8 months a year. No matter what kind of mind games you try to play with the fans, they are not having it. So I think that's kind of a dumb idea. But right now, I think Brock has got to hold it a little bit longer, at least until SummerSlam, and maybe even WrestleMania if those Roman Reigns-Brock Lesnar matches are true for next year. So who knows where they're going to go at this point. It's very early. We have a few weeks to speculate on this. But if I had to guess right now, gun to my head, you have to pick a winner 1 hour after the pay-per-view airs. I'm probably going to go with Brock Lesnar to retain, but that doesn't mean I can't change my mind, and I'd love to hear some of your ideas about this match and what they could do. Do you think Seth Rollins might get involved, maybe cost Samoa Joe the match somehow? It's a really interesting match with both these guys being heels, and it'll be cool to see Paul Heyman on TV hyping this match and maybe some of the interactions between Paul Heyman and Samoa Joe. That might be a lot of fun. We saw Heyman come out on Raw and talk to Finn Balor a couple of weeks ago, so I'm sure we're going to have some sort of a Heyman and Joe confrontation, and I don't know what Brock's schedule is or when he is scheduled to be on Raw, but that first ever face-to-face showdown between Brock and Joe should be pretty awesome. And you know what would be cool? I'm just throwing this out there. Now, I don't think that Brock Lesnar and Samoa Joe necessarily need a stipulation or need anything added to this match. I think one-on-one for the first time ever, Joe versus Brock is all you need. But if you wanted to throw a wild card in there or add something to this match, you could always have a special guest referee and have that referee be the general manager, Kurt Angle. Don't forget, he has a shit ton of history with both of those guys. He wrestled Brock on top in WWE, he wrestled Joe on top in TNA, and his rivalries with both guys were very memorable and very brutal. So I think Kurt Angle could be a really fun special guest referee if these two guys get in each other's faces on Raw and normal WWE officials can't keep them separated or can't keep them apart. Maybe Kurt Angle steps in and offers up his services and says, I'm going to be the special guest referee. I'm the only one that can keep you two in line. And who knows, maybe with Kurt's involvement, you could schmozz up the finish a little bit. You know, we saw a submission tonight. Did I even mention the finish, by the way, of the Fatal 5-Way? We saw Samoa Joe choke out Finn Balor. So maybe there's a submission type situation at Great Balls of Fire and Kurt Angle calls for the bell prematurely, screwing over one of the guys. WWE seems like they have options galore for the next pay-per-view, so let's keep our fingers crossed that we see something cool. Now that we've got the main event out of the way, let's go all the way back to the beginning of the show now. They didn't have any sort of kickoff match announced. I didn't predict any in my predictions video because I didn't know of any. Well, it turned out to be Apollo Cruz versus Kalisto again, and I think Kalisto won this time, and it was a match I wasn't even home to see. I didn't get home until about 10 minutes before the pay-per-view started. So I missed the entire kickoff match, and I really don't care about it. The show opened with the Intercontinental title match, The Miz versus Dean Ambrose. Of course, the stipulation in this is that if Dean Ambrose gets disqualified, he loses the Intercontinental title, which I think is ridiculous because the pay-per-view is Extreme Rules. I didn't even think disqualifications were allowed on this pay-per-view, so I guess that made the match unique, if you want to say that. But The Miz did win the Intercontinental title, regained it now for the 7th time. They did a lot of teases in this match to Dean getting disqualified. At one point, The Miz ripped off the turnbuckle pad, and Dean Ambrose almost rammed The Miz into it and realized that if he does that, he's going to get DQ'd, so he stops. Maurice is up on the apron at one point, and The Miz tells her to slap him, so she slaps him across the face in the attempt to get Dean Ambrose disqualified, but the referee's like, I know what you're doing. Well, no shit, referee. I'm glad you have a fucking brain in your head. And he doesn't allow the disqualification, and he even sends Maurice away. And then as she's leaving, The Miz throws Dean Ambrose into the referee, and this time the referee doesn't see through it, and he's all pissed off at Dean Ambrose. He's walking over to the timekeeper's table to disqualify Dean, and Dean's got his back turned, yelling at the referee, don't do it. It was an accident. The Miz threw me into you. And the whole time that Dean is distracted, that allows the Miz to recover, catches him from behind and hits him with a skull-crushing finale and pins him and wins the Intercontinental title. So the Miz is champ once again, and I have no problem with that. I like the Miz as Intercontinental Champion better than I like Dean Ambrose as Intercontinental Champion, and I did catch a couple of seconds of Raw talk where the Miz started the show with Renee Young and given her a lot of shit about beating her boyfriend, or her husband, for the IC belt, so that was kind of funny. I didn't pay very much attention at all to the mixed tag team match, but Rich Swann and Sasha Banks did beat Alicia Fox and Noam Dar, so nothing too special there. That's something that we could have seen on Raw or 205 Live any week on TV. We then had some filler. Elias Sampson was out there all by himself. I thought he was going to have a match, but he just came out there and sang a little bit longer than normal of a song just to, I guess, kill time. And it was pretty much tailored to the Baltimore crowd. Didn't pay too much attention to his lyrics or anything like that this time. As a matter of fact, I left the room to go get a new beer. But I'm still a big fan of Elias Sampson. I'm glad they gave him some TV time on this pay-per-view, even though he didn't have a match. And hopefully we see more great things from him in the future. After that, we had Alexa Bliss taking on Bayley in the kendo stick on a pole match. And this is a match that I predicted wrong. Very wrong. I thought Bayley was going to prove to everybody that she could get extreme. I mean, don't forget, WWE was trying to push her on top. She successfully defended the women's title at WrestleMania, and now she's getting beaten pretty badly by Alexa Bliss, and this match kind of ended abruptly. Alexa just beat the shit out of her a few times with a kendo stick, and then next thing you know, she, I think, hits her finisher or something, and then pins her just like that. My eyes weren't even on the screen. I think I was reading Twitter, and then I saw the referee count 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, holy shit, it's over just like that? Wow, I did not see that coming. That was a pretty convincing beatdown of Bayley by Alexa Bliss, and I don't know what this is going to mean for Bayley. Maybe this is all part of something to get Bayley to change a little bit. Maybe they want to make her a little bit more realistic, and maybe her going on a losing streak here and losing some title matches and getting shown up by Alexa is a way to start that, and maybe Bayley can transition into a more serious competitor. I don't know. I have no idea what their plans are for Bayley, but we know what their plans are for Alexa Bliss. Despite that horrible "This Is Your Life" segment, they're still pushing her hard, and she beat Bayley pretty convincingly in the kendo stick on a pole match, and congrats to Alexa. In another match that I predicted correctly, this one was pretty fun. Cesaro and Sheamus regained the tag team titles, beating the Hardy Boys in a pretty good cage match. The crowd was into this one. It was just so cool to see the Hardy Boys back in that environment. And I tweeted out something to the effect of everybody at Gorilla during that match was probably looking at each other like, why the hell did we let these guys leave for 7 or 8 years? Like, what the fuck? The Hardy Boys are so over. They are a timeless tag team. Everybody loves them. And they're out there kicking ass just like they would have 10, 15 years ago. It was a pretty awesome match. The rules in this match were that you had to escape the cage to win, so there's no pinfalls, no submissions, nothing like that. Both team members had to exit the cage to gain victory. Now, during the course of the match, Jeff Hardy actually gets out. He's on the outside of the ring. Unfortunately, that leaves Matt in a 2-on-1 situation, and Matt is getting his ass handed to him. So eventually, Jeff Hardy's got to come back into the ring, and we knew at some point he would fly off the top of that cage, and he did. That's how he re-entered the ring. I think he hit the Whisper in the Wind, or whatever the fuck it's called. He hit that from the top of the cage onto both Sheamus and Cesaro, which was a pretty cool spot. The finish saw basically a race between the two teams. Sheamus and Cesaro are scaling down the outside of the cage while Matt Hardy is trying to pull Jeff Hardy's lifeless body out the door. And Sheamus and Cesaro touch the floor just a split second before Matt Hardy's able to pull Jeff Hardy out. And Sheamus and Cesaro won back the tag team titles by the skin of their teeth. So it was an okay finish, but a much better match. And I'm happy that Sheamus and Cesaro won back the titles because I'm a big fan of that team. I've been mentioning that every single week in my commentaries, and I predicted them to win here, and I'm glad that they did. I think the belts look good on those guys. I like their team. I like their whole presentation, and I like the alliance between the two. So hopefully this tag team title run will last more than one day, because don't forget, up until now, the Hardy Boys are fucking undefeated. Their crazy undefeated streak since entering the company at WrestleMania is finally over, which is kind of why I predicted Sheamus and Cesaro to win this match, because in my head I'm thinking, how many more times can these guys lose? They have got to win at some point. And at least in a cage match, nobody is pinned or buried or anything like that. It was simply a photo finish, so to speak, with both teams racing to get out of the cage. So it wasn't even that big of a deal. I'm sure the Hardy Boys will get a tag team title rematch, whether or not they'll win the belts back or lose their opportunity and then become broken if something happens with the broken characters in the future. There's still a lot to be determined as far as the fate of the Hardy Boys in the WWE goes. But for right now, Sheamus and Cesaro are back on top in the tag team division, and I couldn't be happier. I also couldn't be happier that Neville continues to kick ass. So when did he win this belt? At the Royal Rumble, I think? And I had said as soon as he won it, he should hold that thing until SummerSlam. Really give that Cruiserweight title some meaning and put it on a credible champion who's an ass kicker, and Neville is just impressing the hell out of me. They had us thinking that he could drop the belt here. A lot of people did pick Austin Aries to win the Cruiserweight title. I, for some reason, just didn't see it happening. We saw Neville tap out on Raw, and I know that he tapped out Aries, I think, on 205 Live, but even though he did that, I still didn't see Neville tapping out twice inside of a week after he's been so dominant for the past 6 months. So at this point, since you've already made it till June, you might as well wait until SummerSlam and have Neville drop the title at a big show, because after a reign this long, when he finally does lose that belt, it needs to be at a memorable pay-per-view, not on Raw, and definitely not on Great Balls of fucking Fire. So hopefully come SummerSlam, whoever Neville's next contender is, he might get dethroned by that person, and if he did, I'd be fine with it because I want him to hold the belt this long to begin with. And if he goes beyond SummerSlam, even better. As far as I'm concerned, have him break the Honky Tonk Man's record for all I care. Have him hold this belt for a year and a half and you're going to get no complaints out of me. I love Neville. And I agree with him that at least in the Cruiserweight division, nobody is on the Neville level. So overall on the pay-per-view, I think I went 3-3. I predicted The Miz winning the IC title correctly. I predicted Sheamus and Cesaro winning the tag team titles correctly. And I predicted Neville retaining the Cruiserweight title correctly. All the other matches I got wrong. When I look at the effort from everyone tonight, I can't really give this pay-per-view a bad grade. I think there was a lot of issues with it. I thought it was a little bit weak on paper. I thought the Baltimore crowd could have been a little bit more lively at times during the pay-per-view, which hurt the show in my opinion. But overall, we saw good effort from The Miz and Dean Ambrose. Sheamus and Cesaro and the Hardy Boys, of course, tore it up. I loved the Neville and Austin Aries match, which I didn't even mention the finish of that, by the way. Awesome red arrow right onto Austin Aries and immediately locks him into the rings of Saturn right after that. And you could see the look on Aries' face. He's like, I'm fucked. And he immediately just tapped out. Really good stuff in that match. I felt the crowd could have been a little bit more lively for that match as well, because that was a match that had a long build, and now it's a submission match. This is essentially the blow-off, at least I would assume it is, between these two guys, and they're probably not going to work again after the finish that we saw. And I enjoyed the match a lot more than the crowd appeared to enjoy the match. But all in all, I'll probably grade this pay-per-view C+, B-. Gets a really high score because of the outcome of the main event, Samoa Joe winning and going on to Great Balls of Fire to have what is a very rare dream match left in this business for us fans to witness. So that should be a lot of fun. So sorry for the short reaction tonight. There just wasn't a whole lot to talk about as far as Extreme Rules goes. It wasn't like Roman Reigns won and we had to debate for 30 minutes on whether or not it was a good idea or bad idea. I think we can all agree that Samoa Joe winning tonight was a good idea, and I think it made 99% of the wrestling audience happy. So I'm interested to hear what all of you have to say about this pay-per-view. Please leave all your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. I'll take a look at them. Still working on my next big project, which is a Q&A. Send your questions to goodmicwork@gmail.com. I'll try to take a look at them, but for the most part, I'm done selecting questions for that, but it's still probably going to be 2 weeks before I get that up. And of course, I will be back here extremely late on Wednesday night with your Raw and SmackDown review, and we'll talk about the fallout from Extreme Rules and whatever goes down tomorrow night on Raw with Samoa Joe, potentially Paul Heyman, maybe even Brock Lesnar, who knows. I'm sure we're going to have some rematches too. Finn Balor and Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt. Everybody's going to be pissed off about not winning, and I'm sure General Manager Kurt Angle will make some sort of a match to get somebody some sort of an opportunity. I don't know. Maybe Seth and Samoa Joe wrestle each other on Raw in the main event. Maybe the winner gets the title shot against Brock. Maybe Seth convinces him to put the shot up. I don't know. They could do any number of things tomorrow night on Raw. But now that we know who the number one contender is, I guess WWE will probably mostly start setting the table for Great Balls of Fire and the matches that we're going to get on that show. So anyway, we'll talk about that in just a couple of days. You guys take care. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you this coming Wednesday. Until then, peace.